There's something oddly empowering about being out in the middle of nowhere with your closest friends. It's like you're in your own little universe, far from the chaos of everyday life. It's you, your crew, and the wild. That's how we felt when we decided to go camping that weekend. Just 4 friends, a couple of tents, and a whole lot of wilderness. Little did we know, someone, or rather, something, was lurking out there, waiting to shatter our perfect bubble of peace. The plan was simple. Drive to a remote campground, pitch our tents, spend a couple of days hiking, fishing, and completely forgetting the world. No phones, no Wi-Fi, just nature. And us. The drive there was perfect. Clear skies, winding roads through thick forests, sparkling lakes. It felt like a movie. We were laughing, blasting music, and making fun of each other like only good friends can. We had no idea how much we'd regret that carefree attitude. We finally arrived in the late afternoon. The campsite was way more isolated than we expected, hidden deep in a valley. No other campers, just an old ranger station at the entrance and a few faded signs marking the trails. We welcomed the seclusion. It felt like we'd stumbled upon a secret spot meant for only us. We set up camp near the edge of a forest, close to a small stream that gurgled peacefully in the background. The air was thick with the smell of pine and damp earth. Everything was perfect, or at least it felt perfect. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we gathered around the fire pit. Ethan, our camping expert, had it going in no time. We roasted hot dogs, swapped stories, and let the tranquility of the wilderness seep in. Stars started to twinkle above us. We all felt like the only people left on Earth. But that peace, it didn't last. It was around 9 p.m. when we first saw him. We were deep into a conversation about some ridiculous incident back at school when Ethan suddenly went silent, his eyes fixed on something in the darkness. He looked off, I asked, following his gaze. At the edge of the clearing, just barely out of the firelight, stood a man. He was tall, thin, and dressed in a heavy jacket and jeans, even though the air was mild. His hair was long and wild, and his face was partially hidden by shadows. But I could see his eyes. They glowed, reflecting the firelight. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there watching. Ethan called out, his voice barely a whisper. No response. He just stared. "Can we help you?" Avery asked, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. After what felt like an eternity, the man stepped forward into the light. His face sent a chill down my spine. He was older than I thought. His skin was pale and drawn, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. His eyes were hollow, empty. And then, that smile. It was faint, but unsettling. He said, his voice low and gravelly, "Passing through?" That didn't make any sense. There was nothing for miles. No roads, no towns, just wilderness. Ethan asked, trying to sound casual, though I could tell he was on edge. The man's smile stretched wider, but it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes moved across us, each one of us, like he was measuring us. None of us knew what to say. There was something off about him, something primal, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Ethan said, clearly trying to wrap things up. The man nodded, still smiling that eerie smile, and turned to leave, and just like that, he disappeared into the woods. We stood there, staring into the dark. "It wasn't there," he said, searching his tent frantically. We all searched, but it was gone, vanished. It didn't make sense. We hadn't moved it. I suggested, trying to stay calm, but something in my gut told me this wasn't right. As darkness began to creep in, we lit the fire again, but the warmth didn't feel comforting this time. The atmosphere had shifted. We all sat in tense silence. Then the rustling came. At first it was so faint we almost dismissed it. But then it got louder. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal. Someone was moving just beyond the clearing. Ethan grabbed the flashlight. He called into the dark. There was no answer, just the wind in the trees. But then, the beam of the flashlight caught something, a face. It was the man. He was back, standing in the shadows watching us, his face barely visible, his eyes glowing in the dark. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. My heart was pounding. I whispered. Ethan said, his voice tight with fear. Avery's voice cracked. Thomas said, his voice shaking. We stood frozen. The man didn't approach, didn't make a sound. He just watched, like he was waiting for something. Then Ethan spoke, his voice firm. We packed up in a frenzy, each of us stealing glances toward the trees. The man was still there, still watching. But he didn't move. We rushed to the car, piled in, and drove. We didn't stop until we were miles away from the mountains, the nearest town finally coming into view. Avery asked, her voice trembling. Ethan replied, gripping the steering wheel. Thomas asked, fear creeping into his voice. I shook my head, my mind spinning. We fell into silence. The questions were endless. Who was he? What did he want from us? Why had he been there? We never went back to that campsite, and we never spoke of it again. But I'll never forget the way he looked at us. And one thing's for sure, I'll never camp in the middle of nowhere again. Finding the perfect camping spot feels like something out of a dream, right? The kind of place where the air is crisp, the trees feel untouched, and the sound of silence wraps around you. A place far from the chaos of modern life, where the only thing that matters is the moment. That's exactly what we were looking for when we set out on that trip. It was supposed to be simple, a weekend escape. Just me, my wife, Sarah, and our 2 friends, Mark and Emily. The plan? A remote lake, hidden away from the nearest town. The kind of place you hear about only through whispers, shared by friends who found it. The drive was long. As we headed deeper into the mountains, the roads turned from gravel to dirt. The trees grew thicker, casting shadows that felt almost alive. The air had that pine-fresh scent, and the forest seemed to breathe with us. Finally, we arrived. The lake, like glass, stretched out before us, surrounded by towering trees. It was perfect, quiet, secluded, and untouched. Just what we needed. We set up camp by the water, the sun dipping behind the peaks. The fire crackled. We shared stories and watched the stars unfold across the night sky. Everything felt right. There was no rush, no phone calls, just us, nature, and the kind of peaceful silence that made you feel small in the best way. But as the fire dimmed and the darkness grew deeper, I felt it, the first hint of unease. I tried to brush it off, but as I sat there staring into the flickering flames, I couldn't ignore it. It was subtle, like a whisper at the edge of my mind. The forest, which had felt so alive, now felt different, like it was watching us. The next morning, everything seemed fine again. The lake sparkled under the sun, and the air was cool and refreshing. But something had changed. The woods felt closer. The trees seemed to press in around us. The birds that had once filled the air with song were silent. The unease returned, stronger now, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. Then came that evening, when things truly began to spiral. We were sitting around the campfire, the sky turning a deep shade of blue, when Mark, who had gone to the tent to grab a jacket, returned, different. There was a tension in his posture, something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I asked casually, but he just nodded, trying to smile. But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I didn't push it, but I could tell we were all feeling it. Something was wrong. Let me stop you here. What do you think Mark saw in the woods? Was it just his mind playing tricks on him, or was something out there with him? Drop your theories in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. That night, it happened. I woke up to the sound of tapping, soft, rhythmic, almost like someone was knocking on the outside of the tent. My heart skipped a beat. I whispered, shaking her awake, At first she didn't. Then the tapping stopped. Just silence. But then it came again. Louder this time, more insistent. My mind raced with thoughts. Was it a wild animal? A prank? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It felt deliberate. I grabbed the flashlight, my hands shaking. "Stay here," I told Sarah, my voice barely steady. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek out. The moonlight illuminated the campsite, casting long shadows across the ground. I scanned the area with the beam of my flashlight. And that's when I noticed something strange. The flap of Emily and Mark's tent was open. Zipper undone. The wind fluttered the fabric, and I called out their names. No answer. I stepped closer, my stomach twisting. I shone the light inside, and it was empty. Their sleeping bags, the blankets, still warm, but no sign of them. Gone. I rushed back to Sarah. I whispered. We searched the campsite, calling their names. The air felt thick with something wrong, but there was no sign of them. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. It was like they had just disappeared. What do you think happened to Mark and Emily? Do you believe they were taken by something, or could they have run off for some strange reason? Comment below with your theories. I'm dying to know what you think. With the terrifying realization that our friends were gone, we packed up and rushed to the car. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for the keys. But when I turned the ignition, nothing. The car wouldn't start. We were trapped in the middle of nowhere. Sarah asked, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. We decided to walk. We grabbed what we could carry, and in the suffocating darkness we started down the dirt road, the shadows of the forest closing in around us. Every step felt heavier, like the forest was pushing back. After what felt like hours, we saw it. A flickering light in the distance. Sarah whispered. We ran toward it, the light guiding us like a beacon of hope, and then we found it. A small wooden cabin, the glow of electric lights cutting through the dark. A park ranger station. We banged on the door, desperate. The door swung open, and an older ranger looked us over, concerned but calm. I gasped. Without a word, the ranger stepped aside. But as we recounted the events to the ranger, something strange happened. The ranger's face shifted. He wasn't surprised by what we said. There was something darker in his eyes, like he had seen this before. He said quietly. The rangers gathered and we all headed back to the lake. When we arrived, the campsite was still as we had left it. The fire pit, the tents, but no sign of Mark and Emily. The rangers searched the woods for hours, but there was no trace of them, not a single clue. The official report said they were probably victims of an accident, but I knew the truth. Something took them, something we can't understand. And whatever it is, it's still out there. Now I know you're wondering what happened to Mark and Emily. Where did they go? And what did the rangers really know? Stay tuned, because we might just have answers to questions you won't want to miss in the next video. But for now, remember, when you step into the unknown, you might just find that it's already waiting for you. By stopping the story in a couple of places to engage the audience with questions and letting them guess what's happening, you can draw them into the narrative and get them involved in solving the mystery. This approach adds suspense and encourages interaction in the comments, increasing engagement with your viewers. How does this version feel? Let me know if you want to tweak anything further.